Okay, this is our Algebra 1 EOC Practice Test, picking up with Part 2, the constructed response portion. It says an empty wheelbarrow weighs 48 pounds. It says when bricks are put inside the wheelbarrow, the total weight, W in pounds, is given by W equals 3x plus 48. Let x be the number of bricks. The first question, Part A, says what is the independent and dependent variable? Well, you have to think about what's going on. You can always remember, if you're looking at a graph, the independent variable is always the one that's on the bottom. It's always the x variable. The dependent variable is always the y variable. Again, that's if you're looking at a graph. We don't have a graph here, but it tells you that x is the amount of bricks. So you know that that's the independent. Another way to think about this is to say, well, okay, the more bricks we put in, according to this here, we know if we put only one brick in, it's going to be 3 plus 48. We know if we put 10 bricks in, it's going to be 3 times 10 plus 48. So the y depends on how many bricks there are. Depends on how many x's there are. So what is the independent and what is the dependent? The independent is the amount of bricks, or the x variable. The dependent is the weight, or the y variable. And then again, the difference, just to reiterate what I just said, the difference in the independent and the dependent, the independent, for lack of a better way to say it, is independent. It's independent. Means it could go up or down. The amount of bricks could go up or down regardless of the weight. The weight itself, though, in this case, the dependent one, will go up if there's more bricks. And it will go down if there are fewer bricks. So it's dependent on it. On the back, it says, this one person measured, it says, Ivan measures the area of a rectangle to be 1,200 square meters plus or minus 2%. The other person measures the length to be 40 meters plus or minus 1%. So it says calculate the width. Well, we know if it's 1,200, it says to do it with appropriate absolute and relative errors. It's sitting as hard as it looks. You know that if you're not talking about 2% plus or minus or 1%, you know 1,200 equals 40 plus the width, because that's what we calculate in the width. So you know it's going to be 30, because 30, not plus, I said plus, times. You know it's going to be 30, because 30 times 40 is 1,200. So right here, all you have to do is take that 30 that W would be and multiply it by plus or minus 1% to make it match the other one. So 30 plus 1%, and again, 1%, you have to make it into a decimal to where you can multiply it. It becomes 0.01. Multiply 30 by 0.01. 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 3 is 3, and just move that decimal over 2 times. Move it over once, twice, 0.3. So it's either your width is going to be between, it's just going to go 0.3 over 30, so that's the larger side is going to be 0.3, and it's going to go 0.3 under 30, so 29.7. So it's just 0.3 smaller than 30 and 0.3 longer than 30. Then it tells you to draw a scatter plot for these measurements that this girl Gwen took. So all you got to do for this is go to 99, and you're just estimating with this as well as you can. You had to draw this on a sheet of paper. It's a little harder. But 99 would be right under 100. 48 would be right under 50. So your first point would kind of be right there. Do the same thing with 85.27. So halfway right here is 90. So you know 85 is halfway between 80 and 90. So 85 would be right in the middle, and 27 would be just below 30. There. 97.48 would be close to the other one that we already put. 97.48 would be about right here. 75.16, it gets a little bit tedious. You know 70 is there, so 75 and 16 would be approximately there. 9232 would be 9232 would be right about there. 8525, again, we already have 80. We already have 85. At 25 would be right where the 8527 was, right below that one. And then 8320 would be a little bit less than that both ways. So you have a scatter plot that looks something like that. It says classify the relationship. Well, we had one earlier that showed an even smaller correlation than this one does. This one looks a lot more straight than the one we had earlier, the one with the gestation period. It says classify it. It is a linear trend. And it even tells you to draw a trend line if possible. So your trend line would look like that. Now the next page, number 29, says the segment FG is shown below. The point H is in the middle. It says it's equidistant from F and G. What are the coordinates of H as a midpoint? Okay, this is just the midpoint. You don't have to remember the midpoint formula. You know what the X is and what the Y is. You know this one's X and this one's Y too. So take the two X values, 7 and 0, and average them out. 7 plus 0 is 7 divided by 2. We know that the X value is going to be 3.5. Do the same thing with the Y value. You know it's negative 8 plus 1 divided by 2. So negative 8 plus 1 is negative 7 divided by 2. That's negative 3.5. So the point right in the middle, when you average them out, is 3.5, negative 3.5, X comma Y. Think of the midpoint as being in the middle, average them out. Just like if you were looking for the median of two things, if you were looking for the median between 10 and 16, you know, to add 10 and 16 together, divide by 2. You're doing the same thing. You're just doing it with the X and the Y value. Number 30 says, which of the following graphs shows a line with a slope of negative 5? Not this one, that's a positive slope. Not this one, that's a positive slope. So it's between A and C. Both of those are negative. Negative 5 is over 1. Remember, slopes are always rise over run. So that's saying go down 5 and to the right 1 time. This one right here looks like it's going down 1 and to the right 5 times. That's backwards from what we're looking for. This one looks like it goes down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and to the right 1. So that's the only one that has a slope of negative 5. Remember that it's over 1. Number 31 says, what is the equation? Michael graphs this. What's its equation? Well, we know what this point is. We can see it. We can see it crosses through at negative 4. So the B value is negative 4. Then you have to pick another point that's going through an intersection. This right here looks like a pretty good intersection right there. That'll tell us what our slope is. So go up from your B value. You got to go up once, twice, 3 times. Up 3 times is positive 3. And to the right 1 is positive 1. Now you got an M value and you got a B value. Again, Y equals MX plus B. Leave Y, leave equals, and leave X. Plug in M, 3. And plug in B, negative 4. 3X minus 4. Number 32 says they have this this expression. The engineer uses this expression. What is the value you get when you use X's value being negative 2? Negative 2, you're just plugging it in. You substitute it in every spot. Cubed minus 8 times negative 2 squared plus 10 times negative 2. So just evaluate all of your exponents at this point. Negative 2 cubed, negative times negative is positive, times one more negative is going to be negative 8. Minus 8 times negative 2 squared is going to be positive 4. Plus 10 times negative 2 is minus 20. And then we forgot to bring this down, negative 15. Okay. So you have multiplication to do. Do your order of operations. Negative 8 times 4 is negative 32. So you have negative 8 minus 32 minus 20 minus 15. When you put your like terms together, negative 8 and negative 32, that's negative 40. Minus 20 is negative 60. Minus 15 is negative 75 for that one. This one says Yale's soccer team must select 3 co-captains out of 12 players. How many ways can these players be selected as co-captains? Well, there's 12 of them. This is a permutation. This is something we looked at very, very briefly a long time ago. There are 12, think of combinations and permutations anytime you have something like this. 12 players, and there's 3 of them. So you multiply 12 times 11, that's the next number less than 12, times 10. That's the next number less than that. And there were 3 of them, so we did 1, 2, 3 of them. When you multiply 12 times 11 times 10, you get there are 1,320 different ways that they can be selected. This one says, which inequality models the one that Joshua drew? Okay, so treat it like it's an equation to start. You know, for an equation, y equals mx plus b. This is your b value. That b value is at positive 6. But it's easier in this case. Actually, let's go with this one. It's easier to use the intercepts, but most people have problems with that. Check and see what the slope is from there. So you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, down 6, and over 1, 2, 3, over 3. So that simplifies your m value to negative 2. So you have m is negative 2, b is 6. Again, y equals mx plus b. Y equals negative 2x plus b plus 6. Then all you have to do is make it into standard form, because you wanted to say xy, you wanted to say ax plus by is equal to c. So you have to move this negative 2x over, and it becomes positive 2x plus y equals 6. Now we know this is not an equation though. Had it been an equation, it would be done at that point. 2x plus y equals 6. So you can see it's either going to be C or D. It's either going to be less than at this point here or greater than 6. We know it's a dashed line, so we know it's not or equal to. So we have to determine right now if we want to make it say less than or greater than. We can choose the point 0, 0. It's been a while since we did this too. Do we want to have a true statement or a false statement? You want it to be true because it's shading towards 0, 0. So when you plug in 0 in place of both x and y, 2 times 0 is 0 plus 0. You want it to be true when it says whatever it does to 6. So 0 is something 6. We know that 0 is less than 6 makes the true statement. So you use that same equation, 2x plus y equals 6, and you plug in the true statement, less than 6. And that was D for that one. Next one says, starting in the year 2000, the population of this girl's town is represented according to the equation P equals negative 400T plus 11,500. And it's T represents the year since 2000. Okay, so then it says, what's true? Well, we know it's negative 400 times the amount of year. That means it's going down. The population started at 11,500 and it's going down. So this is saying the population decreases 800 every 2 years, because it says minus 400. It was in 2003. It wasn't 10,700. The population doesn't decrease by 400 each year. I'm sorry, it does. B says increases. It doesn't increase. It's decreasing. The only one that actually works is the last one, where it says it decreases. That's the key right there. By 800 every 2 years. (36) says the average weight of a grain of sand is 4.5 times 10 to the negative 6. A container holds 3.0 times 10 to the positive 7th grains of sand. Calculate the approximate weight of the sand in the container. Well, we know each one weighs this much, 4.5 times 10 to the negative 6, and it holds 3.0 times 10 to the 7. That's the approximate. So we can multiply these two scientific numbers by each other. 4.5 times 3.0. You get 13.5 when you multiply those two together. Then you're multiplying the same base, 10 and 10. You're multiplying the base, so you add the exponents. Negative 6 plus 7. Negative 6 plus 7, you get times 10 to the positive 1. But what's the problem with this in regards to scientific notation? 13.5 is too big. The number this right here has to be between 1 and 10. So move that decimal over one spot, make it 1.35 instead, times 10, and we moved it over one time, so 1 has to become 2. 1.35 times 10 squared kilograms. This one says Chris collects aluminum cans. On Saturday, he begins with 120, and he collects new cans at a steady rate of 80 per hour. The equation, a number of cans y to time t in hours is y equals 80x plus 120. It says if Chris began with 60 cans, what would change about the graph? Well, we know y equals mx plus b. It's saying instead of 120, it's saying 60. So y equals 80x plus 60. That's what it's saying would change. He's still collecting 80 per hour. He's just starting with fewer cans. So if the first graph looked like this at 120 is where it started, and it went up 80 per 1 hour, so it went up to here, for example, it would still look like that. Instead of being there, though, it would start at 60, and it would be parallel to that one. It would still go up 80 and over 1. So his new graph, according to the description, the last one goes right. It says the graph would shift downward, and the steepness would stay the same, because his steepness or his rate of change or his slope does not change, only his starting point. Here's a term that we hadn't talked about. Learn this term before you ever got in this class. You learn this term in your science class. Outlier. An outlier is a very easy concept. It is something that lies outside of everything else. That's why it's called an outlier. Which one of these numbers does not belong with the rest of them? That's what it's asking you. It is a number that is really high or really low. The only number that fits that criteria out of all of these is the number 36. It's a very high number. That is the outlier, 36. It says Delia makes a scale drawing of a triangular camping tent. In the drawing, the tent has a height of 12.5 centimeters and a base that measures 10 centimeters. In actuality, it has a height of 5 feet. How wide is the actual base? Well, they're similar to each other, so this is an easy proportion question. 10 centimeters is equal to how many feet? We don't know how much it is, so it's x. Over 12.5 centimeters is equal to 5 feet. Very simple proportion question. Cross multiply, 10 times 5 is 50, equals 12.5 times x is 12.5x. Get x by itself by dividing by 12.5 on both sides. And 4 feet is the answer. The base is 4 feet. Number 40 says translate it 2 units to the right and then reflect it across the y-axis. Okay, so you want to move the whole thing over 2 units to the right. So if we move this over 2 units to the right. 6 is going to become 8, and it's still going to be at -2. It doesn't say go up or down at all. If you move this one 2 units to the right, 2 is going to become 4, and it's going to stay -3. Don't move it up or down at all. So when it's translated 2 units to the right, it'll be at 4, -3, and at 8, which we don't have shown, -2. So it'll look like that. Then it says reflected across the y-axis. So that means the whole thing is going to move over here and look like this, because this is your y-axis. So the only numbers that change are your x values. This x changes to -8, -2 stays the same, and this 4 changes to -4, and -3 stays the same. So those are the new coordinates: -8, -2, -4, -3, and you can see the only one that matches that picture is the one for C. It's the only one that's over here in this area here. 41's a little bit simpler. It says simplify this. The number 4 goes into this. The square root of 4 goes into 9 2 times, and there's 1 left over, and it goes into 16 4 times. So we can break that down again. So we have 2 times the square root of 4 one more time times the square root of 6. So 2 times 2 times the square root of 6, or 4 times the square root of 6. So that's the square root of 96 broken down, taking 2 steps to do that. You can do the same thing with the square root of 24 that we did a second ago. -3 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 6 again. -3 times 2 times the square root of 6, or -6 square root of 6. Now you have the exact same radical. Both of them say the square root of 6. So you take 4 and you subtract 6 from it, and you get -2 times the square root of 6. Allison uses the equation P equals 3T minus 165 to determine how many customers she's going to have with the temperature, with the change in the temperature. The question says, if Allison would like to determine the temperature based on the amount of customers she has, what would her equation look like? This one's saying she's going to have this many customers based on that temperature. She's trying to say, what if I want to determine what the temperature is? So she's trying to get T equals all by itself instead of P. So in order to do that, you just want to work this backwards. Undo. Right now it says P equals 3T minus 165. Undo minus 165 by adding it. Add it to the other side. And you have P plus 165 equals 3T. Then divide by 3. You have to divide this by 3, so you get 1 over 3P, plus 165 divided by 3 is 55. So T equals 1/3 P plus 55.